Okay, we're now moving to our last speaker. No stranger to me. Like our first talk, Claire and I have spent a long time working together, and I want to introduce to the floor Professor Claire Garden, who's a Professor of Life Science Education and currently the Associate Dean for Learning and Teaching within the school. Claire started her career in molecular and developmental neuroscience, and she's earned significance in her career as someone who is driving forward educational development. Claire is a Principal Fellow of the Higher Education Academy. She has developed some fantastic interventions and innovations in education, and I will stop talking, Claire, so I don't want to steal your thunder. But she collaborates at a sector level, and I think it's really important to recognise the work that's led to Claire's professorship, who's working on the national stage supporting education and skills development in the life sciences sector. So, Claire, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So thank you very much for that sound in here is weird, isn't it? So thank you very much for that introduction, Gary. And yeah, so I've got quite a big job title. When I introduce myself to people, I tell them that I am a Professor of Life Science Education with a background in molecular neuroscience. And I'm also the Associate Dean of Learning and Teaching in the School of Applied Sciences here at Edinburgh Napier. And what that means, really, is that I spend half my time on leadership, a day a week on scholarship and research. I'll talk about what that means in a minute. And the rest of my time teaching and doing the admin that we all have to do. And we've only got half an hour, so I can't tell you about all of that. So what I'm going to do is focus on the research and the scholarship bits and some of the teaching. And what I'm going to do is talk about my career and the ways that my thinking about being a scientist have changed during the course of that career. And I'm going to take the opportunity to thank some people, so I hope you'll indulge me. And one of the first sets of people that I want to thank are Suha Jaradat and Cameron Graham and Fiona Smart. And the reason I want to thank them was about a year ago, I nearly gave up on being promoted on the learning and teaching pathway. It didn't seem possible. And so I was looking for other ways to gain recognition as an education-focused scholar. And I found that people like me were applying for Principal Fellowship of the Higher Education Academy. And I thought, right, maybe I could give that a go. And they supported me to put this story that I'm going to tell you together and have the courage to tell it with pride, because I'm a massive introvert. I do not talk about myself readily. I'm not very good at boasting. The people that have met me in meetings might be a bit surprised because I do speak up quite a lot, but not about myself. So I want to thank them. The other thing I need to do is, well, when I was writing this talk, it turned into a talk about inclusion. I didn't quite mean it to, but that's kind of the gel, I think, that glues some of my work together. And when you do that kind of work, it's really important that people know where you're coming from. So I need to tell you a little bit about myself. So if you can see me, if you can hear me, you can tell that I'm white. You can tell that I'm middle class. I'm also cisgendered, I'm also heterosexual. So I come with a lot of privilege and I acknowledge that privilege. I'm also a woman and I grew up in the 80s and the early 90s. And so with that came certain expectations around my gender. And I have experienced discrimination. I am also, I don't identify as disabled, but I've had significant issues with my health. And I'm very lucky, but after some help, I'm also a parent. And those things have tested my resilience over the years. But they've also taught me the importance of fairness, inclusion, and compassion. And I really hope that they come across in the work that I do. So, now for the embarrassing photos. I'm going to tell you about how my thinking about being a scientist has evolved from this person who was 6 years old, wearing a nurse's uniform that I got given for Christmas, to this. which is kind of the best photo that I can find of me just doing talking, which is what I seem to spend quite a lot of my time doing these days. And there's no test tubes on this picture, there's no lab coats on this picture, there's no Eppendorfs, there's no pipettes, but I will try and kind of shoehorn that in a little bit along the way. And because I'm a professor of education, I need to kind of talk about some of the changes that have happened, or acknowledge some of the changes that have happened during the course of my career. Because when I was 6, this is what computers look like. Okay, we had one, it had a tape drive. It took the whole, it was one in the whole school. It had a tape drive. It took the whole day to get started. And now somehow, and I'm not entirely sure how, I've become the person who's leading the school through the challenges of AI and education. Wish me luck. I also went, when I was at university, chalk and talk was the way that we were taught, okay? Blackboards and people standing and teaching. And these days, I spend a lot of my time playing, basically, not on Teams. I use a lot of other technologies, VR, video, done loads of playing with Lego, lots of cool stuff. And I'll try and touch on some of that in my talk. So I told you that I had a background in molecular neuroscience. I like to show my students really overwhelming slides and then tell them things in simple language so that they think I'm really great. So this is what I worked on. But before I get there, I want to tell you about the degree that I took. So I have a degree in biochemistry, and I chose that degree for 2 reasons. First reason was that it had some genetics in it, and at that point, the human genome hadn't been sequenced. So I thought, well, that sounded really cool. I'm going to just do something that's got some genetics in it. The other reason that I chose that degree was because it had 2 placements in it. And nobody in my family had ever been to university. I didn't know anybody who'd been to university. I certainly didn't know any scientists. So I had absolutely no idea whether being a scientist was an actual job. So So I thought, at least if I go to university and I do a couple of placements, I might find out, okay? So I did my degree, I did my placements, and I did my placements in neuroscience. So this is how I discovered neuroscience, and neuroscience just seemed to be so cool. It seemed to be like the final frontier in biology. We don't understand how the human brain works in health, let alone in disease. And the first main crossroads in my career came at the end of my degree, because I distinctly remember thinking, well, I was offered a job in a pharmaceutical company, and I was also offered a PhD position. And I remember thinking at the time, at least if I take the PhD, if I'm pushing a buggy, people will have to call me doctor in the future. So I took the PhD, and I went to Bristol, and this is what I did while I was at Bristol. For 5 years, I worked in a lab looking at long-term depression. So that's not depression as in the mental health disorder. That is a mechanism of learning and memory. And the brain is made up of billions of neurons that all talk to each other. And we think that memory happens when those connections between neurons either get stronger or get weaker. And when they get weaker, we call that long-term depression. So I worked on a model of long-term depression for 3 years as a PhD student, and then for another 2 years as a postdoc. And I didn't work on all of these models. In fact, I didn't work on the whole of this model. I spent 5 years working on this one molecule called hippocalcin. And, so I spent 5 years doing that. And then I went down to the pharmacology department, and I worked with Maria Usovic, and she's the second person that I want to thank. Because Maria was the first academic woman that I saw to be successful in the whole of my 5 years to that point at Bristol. She taught me what being a successful scientist was about. I didn't know you had to publish papers and get grants. She also taught me that the ethic of care in supervision is actually possible and maybe a good thing. And she taught me about academic motherhood in both senses, both the metaphorical and the actual sense of that. She gave me a huge amount of support when I moved to Napier and when I set up my own lab. But the other thing that I did when I was at Bristol was I started teaching. And I was in the anatomy department. And this is the topic of my first ever tutorial, tetrapod limb evolution. Okay, that is about as far away from molecular neuroscience as actually physically possible to get and still be anatomy. But I really loved teaching, and I loved teaching for two reasons. The first reason is because I could work with people. So I'm a massive introvert, and I thought I would prefer pipettes to people, but actually I don't. I like interacting with people, but only when there's a purpose that helps me to do that. So I really enjoyed the people aspect of teaching. I found it really, really rewarding. But the other thing I love about teaching is the fact that you can zoom out on biology again. I showed you that one molecule that I spent 5 years working on. I got a little bit frustrated and a little bit bored, and teaching allowed me to zoom out and see the connections between the big ideas and teach them to my students, and I absolutely loved it. So I decided to see if I could try and make a career out of this teaching thing. And something else quite important happened while I was at Bristol. So this is Derek, my future husband, who's also a neuroscientist. I wonder how we met. And normally what would happen at that time is that if you wanted a career in neuroscience, you would have to leave the lab that you sort of were trained in, go to America for a couple of years, and then come back and set up your own lab. But we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to leave the UK. So we came to Edinburgh because Edinburgh has got some neuroscience in it. And I came to Edinburgh Napier because I wanted to teach. And it's a modern university, so why not come here and teach? And I did teach. I lost count when I got to 25 different modules that I've led. And some of those I've developed from scratch, some of those I've redeveloped, but I've taught a lot of modules. But what I noticed really, really quickly was, this is a university, right? It's not just about teaching. You're meant to do some research as well. So I did all the things that early career researchers do. I set up my own lab. I got funding. I supervised my first PhD student, Lisa Marie. And then I had a baby. And I have to thank Mick Ray for two things. One, for including me in his research at a time that was really tricky for me, because I was the only neuroscientist here, and you can't do research on your own. But I didn't really know, how to do that by myself, and Mick included me in his research. But he also looked after Lisa while I was on mat leave. Now, I'm incredibly lucky to have a child, but I'm also incredibly lucky to have had the opportunity to have that 1 year to reflect on what it was that I actually wanted to do with my time, because I'm the primary carer. I haven't got endless time. I need to be really careful about how I spend it and use it doing the things that I really want to do. And I remembered that I came here to teach. And at that point, I'd been working on lots of projects. I've been working on my lab research. I've been working on some teaching and learning projects. I've been teaching, and I was also the subject group leader. So I was responsible for the biomedical sciences group. And that was a lot. But I tried to be brave and choose people over pipettes. So I decided to focus on my scholarship and on the leadership. So that's what I did. And I've been working on a number of different teaching and learning projects, and I can't mention all of them. But the one that was really, really important to me is something called the Skills Passport. So I can't remember when this all started, maybe about 2010. Sam Campbell-Casey and Janice McCallum, Anne McNabb and Paddy Durkin, we all sat down in a lab and we said, what are we going to do about this skills gap problem that seems to be emerging in the life sciences sector? And what are we going to do about this confidence problem that seems to be in our graduates that's being published and talked about? And so we decided that we were going to try and do some skills training in our degree. And because I was a subject group leader, I couldn't carry on the scholarship, and Janice and Sam have done a fantastic job of taking that forward. But what I did do was try and get some recognition for this, at the time, pioneering work that we were doing in our degree. So we went for Royal Society of Biology accreditation, and we looked at our curriculum and we revised our curriculum and did all kinds of things. Now, that work and our reputation led to offers of funding to do some upskilling work, and Claire Taylor, I think, was the first person to work with Skills Development Scotland and do a lab skills course. And I'm not quite sure how it happened, but I ended up doing more of the upskilling, getting money basically from the Scottish Government to train students in the skills that they need to work in industry, not our students, but people who were in the rest of the sector, because we had that reputation, and that was fantastic. But the most important one of those projects for me was the Advanced Therapies Skills Training Network, or ATSDN, which happened in 2020. And this was a big project that involved universities in the UK and companies working together with colleges to deliver skills to a group of people to support the growth of the advanced therapies part of the life sciences sector. Now, the life sciences sector in Scotland is really, really important. It is one of the strategic growth targets for the Scottish Government. And it is very productive for the Scottish economy. So as a university, we have to do our job to make sure that our graduates are ready to do those kinds of jobs and to contribute. So, and we had the experience and the knowledge to do that. And I led Edinburgh Napier was the only university in Scotland to be part of the project, and I led that part of the project. So the idea was we were going to train all of these people and they could get jobs in advanced therapies. But unfortunately, what happened was that the pandemic came along and slightly changed our plans. So I stepped into the role of Associate Dean at that point. So it was quite a busy time. And we had to, I'll never forget the day when we had to close all of our teaching labs and our research labs. And our students had absolutely no way of getting any skills training. But this project turned into the way that they could do that, because we made the argument that this was a strategically important project for the country and we were allowed to deliver it. So we trained not only our students, but students from 8 different universities across Scotland. They were able to step into these jobs at a really important point for the health of our nation. And they now contribute in lots and lots of ways and bring back some of that as well. It's important, this project, for another reason. It's because it was the start of my collaboration with SALSA. So SALSA are the Scottish University Life Science Alliance, and they represent most of the universities in Scotland who have life science provision. And we had the opportunity to start talking about why nothing had changed in the sector for 15 years. Why am I still doing upskilling after 15 years? Okay, if we've got this right, I shouldn't have to do this job. It's great that our students have got these skills, but there are only 60 of them, and the majority, most of them don't go into jobs in industry. They go into lots of other jobs as well. So what can we do about that? So we got thinking, and although we'd realised here very early on that the purpose of a degree is not just knowledge transmission. I'm not just standing here reading out words. I have to teach skills as well, and I accept and I agree that a degree is about more than that. It's about educating a person. But we were quite innovative at the time in life sciences by bringing skills into our curriculum. But not everybody was doing that. The other problem that we've got is that doing science in an academic lab, so in the labs that we have here, the science that people are talking about here is not done in the same way as science in an industry lab, because in industry they have all kinds of systems of quality that are required to make sure that you don't accidentally kill somebody by doing your experiment, okay? And we don't do that in universities, and we don't speak that language, and most of us have never been in an industry lab. So what do we do about that? Well, that's why it's so important for us to collaborate together, right? That's why I always collaborate with industry partners. And but the other really good thing about that is when we do that collaboration, we get money, we train a load of people outside the university, but we use the stuff that we made to embed into our own curriculum, teach our own students, and give them those opportunities. So our students stay upskilled. But that relationship between industry and academia clearly wasn't working very well if it wasn't really affecting the whole sector. So I am grateful for the support of SALSA and Skills Development Scotland. So SALSA allowed me to set up the Skills Committee as part of SALSA. So it's traditionally focused on research, but they supported me to set up a skills committee. And the skills committee, with my leadership, delivered the first Scottish Life and Chemical Sciences Skills Summit in 2023. And we brought together 80 different people from universities, from colleges, from businesses, from Scottish Government, and from the public sector to talk about these problems. Why aren't graduates ready for these jobs? Why is this collaboration with industry so difficult? And I'm not going to go through all 15 recommendations because you'll fall asleep and it's very hot in here. So, but one of the ones that really interests me, and these are all being delivered and changes are being made, but the one that really stuck with me is the requirement. Well, the idea that we might try and use technology, because if you remember at the beginning, I was talking about the importance of placements to work out what a science job was. Is it a job? It's really important that students get experiences, authentic experiences in industry labs, but industry don't want to give us these placements. So what do we do about it? Well, we can try and use technology to help us. And one of the technologies that we can use is VR, but unfortunately, VR is not massively accessible. I can't use it because of my vision, but also it's very low throughput. The room that we use only takes 2 people, so that's not really going to work, is it? So I've been working with colleagues in sport, exercise and health and looking at immersive video and whether we can use video to support our teaching. And this is a well-trodden path. I mean, Bill's here. He did loads and loads of video work during the pandemic and supported our delivery of teaching and learning in different ways. So I started to think about the use of technology, but my thinking about teaching differently actually didn't start there. It started way earlier when I was thinking about different ways of teaching that wasn't just talk and wasn't just standing in front of a PowerPoint. And, you know, how can I teach differently? Because my students didn't seem to be very engaged. And how can I help them be engaged? So I started to look into all kinds of different methods of teaching, and I tried loads of different things. And one of the great things about working here is the amount of freedom that we have to do this kind of thing. And, you know, one of the things I started working with was Lego. Jackie's here, and we've done some really cool stuff with Lego. I started using Lego because I thought, maybe if we did some more sort of use some more creative teaching methods, it might help students to kind of visualize and think about the science in a slightly different way. They can use their hands as well as their brains. And, you know, there's a whole pedagogy around using Lego. But what surprised me, and I shouldn't have been surprised, but what surprised me was it opened up doors to do lots of other things. Lego Serious Play is really interesting because the methodology means that you have to have relationship building as part of the work. You have to tell stories as part of the work, and I can see one of my other Lego allies in the audience as well. You have to tell stories about each other, and it dawned on me that this relational aspect is really, really important for engaging students in the classroom. And so I was really interested in student engagement and the connection between student engagement and playfulness, and what could we do about that? And one of the big problems that we were facing a few years ago, and it's still a problem now, is getting students to engage with formative assessment. So formative assessment is a form of assessment that doesn't have any marks associated with it, right? So you ask students to come along, do an assessment, but you don't give them any marks. So they go, why would I do that? And they don't do it. And I thought, well, maybe gamification might help with that. Maybe I could ask DLCE to give me some money and allow me to do a project. So that's when Errol came into my life, my second PhD student, and I gave him the challenge of trying to work out if gamification would support student engagement with formative assessment. And Errol is one of the most creative and energetic people that I've ever met. He's also very trusting. I don't have any methodological training in education research, yet we were embarking on this mad project. And Errol did an absolutely fantastic job. I do not have the time to give it justice, but one of the most important things Errol's work did was introduce me to this model of student engagement. And this model of student engagement absolutely changed everything, changed my life. What it did was it helped me to organise my thoughts about student engagement, the things that I was experiencing and noticing about my students. And basically what it shows is that student engagement is a state of being, it's a state of thinking, it's a state of behaviour, it's a state of feeling that students have. I'm looking at all of you and I can tell that you're probably not as engaged as you could be because you're waiting for the drinks outside and it's really, really hot in here and you've just sat through an hour and a half of lectures, but that's okay. But the other thing, and this is about different ways of being a scientist, remember, okay? The other thing is that this really appealed to my scientific brain because it shows me things that affect student engagement and things that might change because of student engagement. And so that allowed me to think about things in a totally different way. It revolutionized my learning and teaching leadership. It helped me to think about why belonging is important, why student partnership is important, why, and it really helped me to kind of put together strategies to support our leadership within the university through the struggles that we've had with student retention. But it also explained to me why inclusion is so important. It's part of engagement. You can't be engaged if you're excluded. And so it really helped me to kind of draw all the threads of what I was doing together. So it's really hard to talk about an entire career in the time that we have, but I've been asked to share some things that I've learned. And one of the things that I've learned is that there are lots of different ways to be a scientist. This is a model of scholarship, it's Boyer's model of scholarship, and I'm really grateful to Anne Tierney for sharing this with me years ago. And I think she meant for me to get to this point a bit sooner than I actually have, but I'm here now. So I want to thank her, and I also want to thank Martha Cadell for sort of rescuing me when I was in the wilderness and I didn't really know how to do the learning and teaching thing. So this diagram makes it make sense to me. So this is scholarship. This is what professors do. All of us do all of these things, but we don't all spend the same amount of time doing all of these things, and we don't all get the same amount of reward doing these things. Now, I didn't know that as a student, as a PhD student, as a postdoc, as an early career researcher, as a lecturer. I've only just realised that myself, right? So it details scholarship, and it tells us that there are different ways to be a professor. Now, we all teach. Some professors do that reluctantly. I love it. I'm a bit weird. And one form of scholarship is finding new ways to teach. Advancing knowledge and discovery is a really nice way of talking about research. And I think when people traditionally talk about research, that's what they mean. I don't love pipettes. I love people. But you can do research with people. And there's also the scholarship of integration, which we don't talk about very much in life sciences at all. But that's taking this idea, taking that idea, putting them together, making a brand new baby idea, which completely changes things. And so we do a bit of that. And there's also the scholarship of application. So how do my ideas change things? How can they change the world? Now, in traditional science, we would probably call that knowledge exchange. But I don't know that people would really think about what I do as knowledge exchange. I spend time with industry, with my colleagues, with my students, and I kind of put all of that together and try and change things. And you have to communicate differently when you're doing knowledge exchange. So I do a little bit of that as well. But I use my scientific brain all the time to solve these problems of how do we make things better for disabled research postgraduates who feel like they've been completely forgotten in this discussion? How do we include students who are experiencing poverty and don't have the same life chances that we do? How do we build a pipeline for life sciences careers that start in colleges, go through to universities and end up in CPD that's linked to national strategies for life sciences and will enable us to make sure that the Scottish economy grows and thrives, and we're really proud of what we do here. How do we do all these things? Well, we use science to do those things, but we use a different kind of science, and we communicate that science in a really different way. So I've learned other things along the way. The second thing that I've learned is that working hard isn't enough. You have to know the rules of the game. And I didn't know the rules of the game. And I told you at the beginning that I come to this with quite a significant amount of privilege. And if I can't work out the rules of the game, how can anybody else do that? So Finding people to work with who understand the rules and are happy to share them with you is fantastic. But now that I'm standing on this stage, my responsibility is to tell everybody all the rules that I know and try and remove as many of those barriers as I possibly can. The other thing that I've learnt is it's not like this, it's like this. And I actually have to reassure everybody that we didn't share our slides with each other, okay? But I suppose if you try and get somebody to tell their career story in half an hour, it's absolutely impossible, and it's going to be the editor's highlights, right? So it's not straightforward at all. The last thing is the importance of team. So I have to apologise to any Celtic supporters in the audience. This was the final a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's fair to say that good teams can do incredible things that people can't do on their own. And I've been privileged to work in some absolutely amazing teams. So I've worked on projects with practically every part of this university. I've included technicians, administrators, people from Wellbeing and Inclusion, people from the library, people from the career service, people from almost every single DLTE, almost every single part of this university is full of absolutely excellent people. If we put the right people in the right teams, we can do amazing things. The other thing, and this is a similar point to what Nick said, but you know, if you're not getting the support that you need inside the university, or if you need to find your tribe, it's okay to look outside. In fact, it's really, really healthy to do that. And there are some organisations that I've been working with that have really supported me and really helped me develop, but also given me opportunities that you don't find if you're trying to do something new and different and a little bit weird by yourself. So I'm really thankful to SALSA, to Skills Development Scotland, to the RAISE Network and to the Society for Experimental Biology, because they've given me some amazing experiences, and I just haven't got time to tell you all about them. I have to put a picture of Errol up here because I'm really proud of him. But also it's a reminder that students are at the heart of absolutely everything we do in universities. If they're not, there's something wrong. So student partnership is really, really important. Doing things with and for students is really, really important. If we're, you know, that's the whole point of a university. Okay, so the students are important. They're at the heart of everything. And finally, friendship and colleagues are also extremely important. You can't do hard things if you don't have people that you trust, who will listen to your ramblings, who will take your criticism, and who are willing to work with you to make something new and better. So I'm incredibly grateful to absolutely everybody I've ever worked with. I've learned so much from all the people, all the students, my collaborators, both inside the university and outside. I haven't got a list of names because, I mean, I would forget someone and then I'd feel absolutely awful. So I haven't got one of those. And if I haven't mentioned you, it's not because you're not special to me. It's because my memory's shot and I'm a middle-aged woman. Right. So last thing, there is a future. I believe it's very bright. I'm going to continue to place students at the centre of absolutely everything that I do. I'm going to work towards a more inclusive tertiary education system. And I'm saying tertiary because that's what our sector's called now. Colleges and universities are in the same boat. And if you're in the same boat, you look after each other, you learn from each other. And we've got a huge amount to learn from colleges. And there's a lot that we're going to be able to do together. I'm going to continue to collaborate to deliver coherent pathways and skills for innovation in the life sciences. And I'm going to share practice internationally. This photo is of a recent visit to Egypt, where Janice and I had a really interesting time. And we're very much welcomed on our British Council funded project that we're working on with Sophie Foley and Usama Amar. You know, it was a great experience because it taught me that the things that I've learned here in Scotland actually apply elsewhere. And some of the challenges that we faced, they faced too. And so there's a real chance for us to make a difference in another country, and that's fantastic. So I think that's me. I hope that was interesting. And thank you to Peter and to Mick for putting on this event. It's been wonderful to share my career with you all.